High in the mountains, a small village had endured relentless attacks from an S-rank Fenrir, forcing the desperate villagers to spend every last bit of their savings to hire an elite S-rank adventurer party to defeat the beast, the Flaming Dragon. Fang, renowned as one of the world's strongest adventurer groups, arrived to handle the task. Each member boasted unique abilities, yet among them was Kurt, a timid, seemingly useless member who ducked behind a wall, desperate to avoid injury. The moment the Fenrir appeared, it targeted Kurt first, sending him flying through the air before he crashed painfully to the ground. As he struggled to get up, the rest of the party sprang into action. Golnova, the leader, barked out orders. Bandana quickly pulled out her wire and wrapped it around the beast in an attempt to restrain it. However, the creature's immense strength proved overwhelming. It hurled her into a wall with ease. Fortunately, their party had a skilled healer who restored Bandana instantly, allowing her to jump back into the fight. This time, she anchored herself to a nearby tree, providing Golnova the perfect opening. With precision, he leaped into the air and ignited the Fenrir's head with the flames of his magic blade. The battle ended in victory, the villagers overwhelmed, with gratitude through a feast in honor of the party despite their poverty. However, Golnova couldn't stomach the food and turned to Kurt, demanding that he cook something decent. Bandana chimed in, requesting something special, since this was their last chance to enjoy Kurt's cooking. Confused, Kurt turned to Golnova for clarification, and the leader delivered the news without hesitation. Kurt was being dismissed from the party. Kurt's heart sank. He asked if he had done something wrong, but Golnova clarified that the issue wasn't what he had done, it was what he hadn't. While Kurt had been useful for chores, he contributed nothing in battle. Since a party could only consist of 4 members, they needed to replace him with a powerful mage, someone who could actually hold their own. Desperate, Kurt pleaded to stay, but Golnova silenced him with a brutal kick to the stomach. They had made their decision. He was no longer needed. The next day, with no destination in mind and his pockets nearly empty, Kurt set off from the village. After a long journey, he arrived in the city of Somela, now down to his last few coins. Desperate for work, he spotted a job agency and stepped inside. The receptionist Kerschel welcomed him and asked if he was looking to hire or find employment. When Kurt explained his situation, she informed him that before he could get a job, he needed to undergo an interview and aptitude test. Kerschel began by asking for basic details, his name, age, and hometown. Kurt answered, Kurt Rockhands, 15, years old, from Haste Village in the Sheen Mountains. Kerschel raised an eyebrow, having never heard of a village in those mountains, but moved on. When she asked about his work experience, Kurt mentioned that he had been part of the Flaming Dragon Fang, though his role was limited to simple chores before being abruptly fired. Kerschel was stunned, even if he had only done menial tasks. Having the name of an S-rank party on his application would definitely improve his chances. Excited to discover his true potential, Kurt took the aptitude test. However, his enthusiasm quickly faded. Every combat skill on his sheet was ranked at the lowest possible level, G rank. It was clear that he would never qualify for a combat-related job. His heart sank, but Kerschel reassured him that he might excel in a trade skill like alchemy or blacksmithing. Unfortunately, the technician responsible for trade test was unavailable, meaning Kurt would have to wait a week. Kurt explained that he couldn't afford to wait that long, so Kerschel suggested a quick strength test. She instructed him to lift a sandbag. As soon as he touched it, he felt a strange sensation, almost as if the sand drained a bit of his mana. Regardless, he lifted it with ease. Impressed, Kerschel suggested he try construction work. The Margraviate of Tan was actively seeking laborers to rebuild the city walls, and with her recommendation, Kurt secured a position there. The construction manager was skeptical, doubting that Kurt's scrawny frame could handle the work. Still, he was short on laborers, so he decided to give him a chance. He instructed Kurt to mix cement and repair the wall, warning him that his pay would depend on his output. Surprisingly, Kurt found the work far too easy. By the time the manager returned, expecting minimal progress. He was left speechless. Kurt had repaired an entire section of the wall. The manager could hardly believe it. He asked how Kurt managed to reach the top, and the boy casually explained that he had simply tossed the cement up and smoothed it out with a stick. It was an impossible feat, yet Kurt had done it effortlessly. Over the next few days, Kurt continued working, quickly earning more money than he had ever received in the hero party. However, his efficiency created a problem. He was working too fast. The wall repairs were meant to provide jobs for the poor, and if Kurt kept going, there would be no work left for others. Regretfully, the manager let him go, believing Kurt's talent was wasted on mere construction work. Misinterpreting the situation, Kurt assumed he had been fired for incompetence. Disheartened, he returned to the job agency. While explaining his situation to Kerschel, a commotion at the front desk caught their attention. A girl was desperately trying to hire a miner to dig through an unexplored mountain. However, her terms were terrible. She refused to provide upfront payment, insisting workers would only get paid if the excavation proved successful. Naturally, no one wanted the job. Kurt, however, stepped forward and accepted. He explained that he had experience in mining back in his village. The girl, Yulia, had initially hoped to hire a muscular dwarf, but since she couldn't afford the upfront costs they demanded, she reluctantly agreed to take Kurt along. As they made their way to the mountains, Kurt was surprised to find only one tent at their campsite. Yulia casually mentioned that they could share, but Kurt immediately refused, admitting he wouldn't be able to sleep next to a cute girl. Annoyed, Yulia assumed he was just flattering her, but when she realized he was completely sincere, she softened. That night, she prepared a simple boiled potato for dinner. It was nothing special, yet to Kurt it meant the world. No one had prepared a meal for him in a long time. He also appreciated that she actually sat down to eat with him, unlike his former party members. Later that night, Kurt struggled to sleep. Yulia had gone to bed in her underwear, and he found it impossible to relax. Respecting her privacy, he quietly stepped outside and chose to sleep under a tree instead. What he didn't know was that Yulia had been pretending to sleep, testing him to see if he was the type to take advantage of a vulnerable woman. Seeing that he wasn't, she realized he was a genuinely good person. The next morning, Yulia stepped out of the tent and spotted Kurt still asleep by the tree. Her guilt grew when she noticed that her torn jacket had been repaired. When she asked if he had done it, he confirmed it without hesitation. She was impressed by his sewing skills, but started doubting whether he would be any good at mining. Regardless, they set off to begin the excavation. To Yulia's astonishment, Kurt quickly located a rock full of gemstones within minutes. He explained that selling raw gems wouldn't be profitable. They needed to be refined into magic crystals. Yulia dismissed the idea, pointing out that only 10 mages in the entire kingdom were skilled enough to do that. Yet before she could finish her sentence, Kurt had already created a perfect magic crystal in an instant. With newfound hope, Yulia took the crystals to sell in the royal capital, while Kurt remained behind. When she returned the next day, she was left speechless. Kurt had built an entire house in just one night.
Watch this next video on screen. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to not miss the next video. Bye.